This is the regular board meeting for Clear Creek Community Service District. It's 6 o'clock and what else am I supposed to? Oh yeah, November 20th, 2024.
Yep. For the pledge, let's say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance. Everybody want to lead?
Please join me. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Doug Johnson.
Beverly Pickens. Pam Beaver.
Scott McVeigh.
Terry Lincoln.
Paul Kelly, General Manager, and I also have Morgan Rao with me from our Distribution Supervisor, and Annie Valdez, our Admin Assistant, when home sick. So I'll be taking notes, and we'll be using the recording here.
Okay, open time. Dennis, it's all yours.
Dennis, Hosein. And I've got two things. First of all, on Veterans Day, that there was a workshop down at the center there, and it was, I think, the Community Alliance for Family Farmers. And there was kind of a small bunch of us, probably about 15 or 17, and talking about the needs of farmers, small family farms. Lots of times we talked about the olive farmers, the orchards, and what we can do to raise funding and whatnot. So that was a pretty good workshop. And that's actually kind of a large statewide profit company, and they've got a big staff. And if you need some funding, you call them up and they'll kind of steer you to one of their staff that will try to set you up. So, real good. And then the main purpose, I think, first of all, I'd like to thank the district for fixing the leak. And they were very prompt, got it done, fixed, over. Good. And
Which one, Dennis?
In his house.
right on my playlist. And I don't think that the problem was a district pipeline. I think they went and dug here several months ago, the phone company that dug a trench for the internet. And it was right where that trench crossed the pipeline. So I think he probably, when he dug the trench, probably hit the pipeline and got it started. I think it was leaking some during the summer, and then it finally broke open. The line breaks have been coming pretty frequently, and at the same time, and it's been, of course, going on for years now, and it seems to be getting worse as the pipes are older and whatnot. There's a danger like during the summer that fire will get started, and there'll be a line break, and there won't be water to save that structure, that house or to stop the fire when it's small. And I think it's, you know, we had lots of fires, start this summer. And at some point in time, that's gonna take place, that problem is gonna take place, it just got to at some point in time. Because we have line breaks scattered all over, and we have fires all over. And so I think it's starting to be, you know, become maybe a little bit dangerous, during the summer. And so I think the board, should look into, declaring an, emergency. And I don't know the, protocol, I think the board should look into what the, you know, what the standards are to call an emergency. And then, you know, you wanna really document, stuff, and you document why you're doing that. But I think, and then another problem is, the grants have just stalled out. And these grants have been going on for a long time, and they aren't, you know, we're not getting funding to fix the problem. And I think it would be, the hope, that the board of filing an emergency, the hope would be that then, that would put, and pressure to get the funding or get the grant going forward and get it done, approved, and get some funding coming in to, start replacing these problem lines. So, that's all I've got.
Thank you.
If I could add something real quick to Dennis's first comments about the meeting on Veterans Day. They also talked about a farm to school opportunities, so people who maybe didn't have a lot, you know, you don't have like apple orchards, but, you know, who is it, Steve Westerby, who's the chair of the community center board? He's involved in that, and through his organization, they do, especially for olive growers, will buy 50, 60 gallons of olive oil a year. You know, fruits, vegetables, so it's opportunities for not just, you know, larger growers, but someone who can, box up any number of things. It was a very good meeting, they have plenty of opportunities for people. And did they not hand out flyers about the chipping coming? And I believe our area is January 1st.
Yes, they did.
So there's the possibility of your brush being chipped. I'll bring the flyer down here to the office and get it in the newsletter. And so all they're gonna do is take their brush or at the roadside, you know, call the number just so they know where to look for you. And they'll come by and chip it up and get rid of it. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? Okay, the consent agenda.
I have a concern on the minutes.
Go for it.
Okay. So under item 10, if we could get this amended, please, on board member items.
Yep.
Are you there yet?
Yep,
Okay.
got it on the minutes.
So, yeah, on the minutes, so, down halfway through, it says, I raised concern about having 4 distribution operators. That's not what I said. If we could change it maybe just to say, I spoke, or, spoke about having 4 distribution operators on staff. And, is that the wrong way to say compliment? Or now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that. Isn't it with an E? Maybe, I think it's a P-L-E and E, give a compliment. Anyways, okay. Yeah, so, yeah, I didn't raise concerns, I just spoke about it.
Alright, any other on the minutes? Amendments updated?
Well,
We'll add that in when we do the whole consent.
okay,
calendar.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Bills paid and.
Yeah, Q report.
Just one quick, thing on the bills paid. Bookkeeper is trying to get it to print, some more memo information. You might recall that when one vendor gets paid for 2 invoices, QuickBooks was blanking out the memo.
Yeah.
So, there's one under PACE that says grant and other invoices. There's one under Sunrise that has 2 invoices for the Happy Valley and China Gulf emergency repairs. The BWP stands for the Backwash Ponds Grant, so there's a $540,000 bill paid to Allen Gill Construction. That we received the RCAC grant anticipation note to cover that payment, but we're still waiting for reimbursement for the grant. There's also the Aqua JPI insurance on it, that's the auto. Remember last year,
Mhm.
63,000, insured 60.
Did we not flag any of those invoices?
We couldn't find any.
I thought, I know we discussed a couple.
Yeah, there was
I
a
thought
couple,
we
but
flagged.
Melissa clarified it for me, so I think
Okay.
I took them off. There wasn't anything that was, I can't, well, one was the mileage. We were missing an invoice
Yes,
for one of them, for
a
gasoline.
receipt.
A receipt, but she said somebody was getting that one, that they knew it was missing.
The other thing, we're mostly gonna take a look at it under item D, which is the actions for budget for FY '22. As the board knows, the financials have been behind. Well, now we're on 7 months, since March. So, bookkeeper's caught up through, the end of fiscal year '24. The finance committee took a look at the preliminary on that. We'll be looking at that on item D. So this is the first, P&L/activity report, for the new fiscal year, or this current fiscal year. It's not new anymore, July. The first one that was put in your packet and sent to you was corrected. But this points to, the change that we'll talk about, later, which is the accrual-based accounting and reporting versus, previously. Up to now, all your previous, activity reports had been, cash-based for revenue and accrual-based for, expenses. So that's been a bit of a bugaboo for the last couple of years since I've been here. So the 2 things. One, the transition is challenging, but now that we've gone to the new COSI software, that allows us to have the revenue be more relatable to accrual. And so there is a sheet in your packet that is under D, but just as a quick reminder, accrual means that the revenue and the expense occurs when that revenue or expense occurs, not when you get paid. So, for example, when you send a bill to a customer for $100 in this month, in July, then that is booked as revenue, or that is identified as revenue. When that customer pays you the cash, that is, that's when you actually get the money in. But you could potentially send a bill in July and not actually get paid for it until.
Or receive an invoice in
Receive,
July and
yeah.
not pay it till August.
So, again, on the other side, when we receive an invoice from, one of our suppliers on July 28th, that's when the expense is put into your bookkeeping, even though we will pay it, probably not until the 10th of the next month. So that'll be one of the confusing elements. I know it was for the finance committee, and then we talk about item D, but this was your first activity report. I wanted it to get in here because we actually had it available. I kind of suggest we do what we did last time, which is not necessarily accept this until we get all of them in next month's agenda. So when you accept the consent calendar minutes as amended, it would be 5A through C, for your information,
Okay.
preliminary information.
Very deceptive, you know, when you look at the numbers.
You have to kind of think outside the box to understand them.
Well, yeah, it's just deceptive, because you look at one and it's like, oh, we're short $209,000, and then you look at the revised one and we're only short $16,000, so.
Except for you've got 32,000 in grant expenses.
Correct, it's very deceptive,
Yes,
that's all I said.
Yeah, and we had another complication for July. Meter reading took 2 weeks. And we were not able to actually generate everybody's statement until either the last day of July or the first day of August. So there's, maybe that.
Does that account for
Yeah.
that
So maybe
shortfall?
deceptive is not the correct word to
No, I
use.
know, it's
It's just,
just,
yeah, out of whack.
Let me ask then, since you mentioned the processing, the meter readings, I noticed that on the revenue side for July, we were 17,000 short on the base rate. Is that part of the reason then, the billing aspect?
I would have
Or
to.
is it because seasonally, we do have people who are getting behind?
I don't know, I have to look at that,
Okay.
based on this one. Yes, this base rate charge puts us at 2360, the base rate, so a little short.
Yeah.
I don't, but on the usage side, it puts us at 242 acre feet and 125 acre feet, which is pretty close to what, was, read in the meter. So for July, it was a lot.
Yeah, what was?
So again, if there's nothing else, Mike, I only really bring that up because it was really for your information. We had it available. We're gonna talk more about sort of the accounting issues as we get to 6D, and also to request that you, do as we did last time, which is leave D off of 5 for your approval, just because the plan is in December to have July through November, all of the activity reports, as well as a finalized item.
I move to accept the consent agenda A through C with the minutes being amended as discussed.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the only, thing on 6A, which is our old business, the Bureau account reconciliation, the primary reason for this is to, back in 2022, they sent us a whole bunch of documents. Yes.
Did you wanna get Morgan on first?
Yes, I do, but right after this item.
Okay.
Because it's short. So there's nothing on the reconciliation, but I was gonna report that the Bureau hosted a WINAC webinar. They did a report on the WINAC reconciliation. Currently, in the list of all the districts that have paid their WINAC, of which we're their we don't owe any more. There actually are a few districts that seem to still owe something, so they're still trying to figure out, what to do with that. And, they also are trying to figure out what to do with if it turns out after the reconciliation, if we had overpaid, what are they gonna do with that overage? And, all of us on the webinar said, we look forward to cashing your check. They said, oh no, we'll probably do it as credits for future payments or something.
Of course.
But the other thing I do want to mention is, you may have heard about the state water board's, discussions related to, flows in the delta, and they were talking about natural flows, and they were talking about all kinds of different things. They've now changed that to healthy rivers and voluntary agreements. So there's still a lot of discussion on that, but there's a lot of worry by the Central Valley Project Water Association that to increase flows in the delta of certain fisheries conditions, that they may be coming to some of us members for some of our water allocation for that. So just a heads up, that may be coming down the line. Otherwise, nothing else on that. And with that, I know I had mentioned multiple times over the last couple of months that I would like to have our distribution supervisor, Morgan Rao, come. And so item 6B is usually near the end of our agenda, we have our operations report that has administrative items, the treatment plant update, as well as operations update. But Morgan's been here 5 months, and I know that you all wanted to hear from her. And she's here to talk about leaks, equipment, staffing, and whatever else you may have on mind. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Morgan, to provide your update. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Morgan. How you guys doing? So yeah, I was here just to answer some questions. I know you guys have some questions about some leaks. We've had a number of leaks. We have quite a lot of AC pipe out there that is failing. So we need to definitely address some 10-inch pipe we have out in the ground for sure. We have contracted new contractors. We've got quite a few ones we've dealt with, like David's Excavating, Kelly's. So there's some new ones that we've put on the books just to see how they work out, so I can get a lot of different contractor estimates for some of the valves and stuff we want to replace. So I'd like to get some different numbers from different people. So, let's see what else we got.
Sunrise.
Yeah, and Sunrise, we have Sunrise, and of course, Axner, but I'd like to see exactly how Axner's goes up compared to the rest of them, so we can see what we're looking at for some of these replacements.
Well, I have to tell you, Sunrise did a wonderful job with 2 patches
Yeah,
compared to Axner.
yeah, I agree with you on that one. They, all their paving jobs were good. I went through and looked at all of them, I really liked them. And they were really nice to work with too, so, yeah. We've got, quite a few active leaks. We do have 4 large main leaks that, we're looking at. We have quite a few, service leaks. And we have at least 17 isolation valves we're looking at trying to replace. We still have that hydrant off Hope K that, we haven't addressed just because it's gonna be quite a large shut off. So we're kind of waiting on that one to hope we can come up with some good ideas on that. We don't have a valve for that hydrant, so it's gonna, and we have quite a few valves, that do not work, so it's gonna be quite a large amount of people shut off on that one. So we have not got to that either. Since July, since I've been here, we've had over 22 large leaks just since I've been here in July. So, yeah, it's been quite a few. So, we've got all our backflow testing done. We finished that up this week. Let's see.
Sorry to cut you off there. What does the backflow testing entail?
testing. So, and then we get a report for the ones that do not, they'll pass, the ones that pass, and go from there.
So what is the actual test? Is it a district employee that's conducting that?
No, it's a contractor.
Yeah, we have a contract with
Yeah.
them.
I was curious about, you said there were 4 large main leaks. Can you tell us the streets that those are on?
Yeah, I actually got a list for you guys too, so you can
Oh,
have.
good, that's what I would like to have.
Yeah, it's the active leaks, the service line leaks, all the roads are on, so I did get you guys a list of all the valves that we need to replace. So, you guys want this?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this the only copy?
Yeah. I would have to share it. It's really close.
I'll make copies at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
In regards to the leak, Paul, I don't know if Amity had got a chance to tell you, but you know that my daughter works for a water company up in Oregon.
Right.
They've had the same problem as we did, where somebody has backed into a fire hydrant or turned it off too fast or whatever, and they said, oops, we're sorry. What they've had to do, and she suggested that we do it, is we say, you're responsible for, maybe they'll pay half of it. But going forward, after you have educated your staff, you will be wholly responsible for it and have them sign it. And they've gone to doing that because what happened is, the companies would say, well, you paid for it last time. You can pay for it this time. And we can't do that.
So, couple things, I'm sure Morgan would get into it. So we've had one incident with all of the tree trimming companies that are out and crews that are out right now. It was a little over a week ago, we had one of the tree trucks back into one of our wharfhead hydrants. So in that case, we are going to put together all of our costs, man-hour costs, equipment, and materials, and submit that to the tree company, and they'll send it to their insurance company, I'm sure, and we'll deal with that. A couple weeks ago, we had a very hot and windy day, and had a fire on out there, and we subsequently had multiple leaks, not a large one on Lassen. And Morgan has talked to the fire chief about that, so you might tell a little bit more about that, but we do plan to send them, complete list of all of what we consider as the impacts, and obviously what we think their responsibilities are. In this case, it's probably going to be CAL FIRE, not our local fire guys. And we will then institute some sort of ongoing training program, or some sort of, letter of agreement that, our on-call person, if it's after hours, will be called in when they're shutting down our hydrants, because.
Well, she said it's very important to get some type of letter and get it in writing,
Right.
or you won't get them to pay for it.
So go ahead and just mention that.
Yeah, so I did talk to Matt, and he suggested that maybe I go to one of their meetings and speak at their meetings and just let them know what we have in the ground. I mean, we don't have regular pipe in the ground, so it would be kind of nice to be able to speak with them about how to shut it off, how slow they have to do it, let it settle out. We've got, small hydrants coming off large pipe. We can't be shutting these things down very fast. So it would be kind of nice to be able to talk to them at one of their meetings so they understand that, hey, this is a different system out here. This is a system you're gonna have to be very slow at shutting, opening, let it stabilize, and I think it would be beneficial to go to one of their meetings, just to speak with them. I also would like to get a letter to Matt, because Matt said he would distribute it through CAL FIRE, bring it to his people, so I thought that would be a good end too, to try to get the information out.
Is there ever a problem, and I don't even know who it was, but at the grocery store down there where that hydrant is, somebody was pulling water out. Does that ever cause a problem when you have somebody that's got a contract, it could have been PG&E, I don't know who it was. But they were drawing water out of that fire hydrant that's right there at, Happy Valley and Melinda.
If there's not a hydrant meter on it, then they should not be pulling it off. We actually have hydrant meters with backflows on them, that we rent out, if they're pulling water off one of our hydrants. And we lock it down, they pay for it. If there is not a backflow, then they are taking our water, which I've also, started getting locks for the top of our meters,
It
for
could've been-
our hydrants.
Yeah, it could have been Cal Fire, I don't, so, but they've got an agreement with us, right?
Yeah,
Or they've got the meter there.
Yeah.
They go into.
So if they're using that meter, then it's not gonna cause any hammering down the road with,
Not with the backflow meter on there.
okay.
Yeah, but that's the problem when we get CAL FIRE hooking up and, they're not using their slow techniques, so they're just shutting them down fast. They're taking way too much at one time. So once you start emptying out, a 10-inch or a 14-inch line and then start shutting them down, you're gonna get some water hammer. So that's what we wanna try to stop. And then you start blowing AC pipe.
So when Cal Fire goes and fills up their tanker truck to haul water, do they have a backflow device on the truck itself?
They should have an air gap.
And they have an air gap?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no chance of any cross-contamination?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Normally, if it's not a potable truck, we don't want it on our system anyway,
I
so.
understand.
So changing the dialogue a little bit, when we're approving the overtime, or we're looking at payroll and we're reviewing overtime, and we're seeing, copious amounts of overtime, so if you could just help us understand, because we're not out there,
Mhm.
and what we see is, we're looking at numbers and funds or whatever, the need to have the entire crew out there all night, it's not safe for them, and is there, are we working on a system maybe that we can rotate people to, yeah, it's money, but it's also the safety of those employees working. I think somebody worked 17 hours or
Yes.
something like that,
Yeah.
which is just, that's horrible.
It's very horrible, yes,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that on my side that I need to start, making a plan for. If it does mean that some of these people might have to be off for a night, or we might have to even get a good Rolodex of contractors to help them have their labor guys come in so we can jump off, come back in the morning. But I definitely need to come up with a better plan than working for 17 hours. But in our mind, when we're going, we're thinking we gotta get these people back up and running.
So when you're out there, because we don't drive by, because we're not supposed to, or just even the public, but it takes that much manpower to work on whatever it is you're doing. What is it you're doing out there? Are you just pulling water out or digging or?
We've got a 10-inch pipe, first we've got to find the pipe, and the biggest thing is dewatering the hole. If you got a 10-inch or a 14-inch pipe, you gotta think, if we had valves that worked, we could isolate in small areas, we'd have less flow coming into our hole. We have very limited amount of valves that are working, so now that means larger areas shut down and a larger amount of pipe that has to dump in that hole. So you gotta think, all that water is going into our hole, we have to pump it out and get it out. So not only do we have to get the dirt out, we've gotta get the water out, we've gotta get then the pipe out, we've gotta cut it, we've gotta install, the hardware, which is pretty expensive also, and put in the pipe, then we've gotta refill it, compact it, so it's quite a long process, and then if we have to cut the road, if it's in the road, then we have to, cut the asphalt, and
And you've got giant lights for.
we could use some more, but yeah, we do have some lights, we've got, our trucks we keep with our flashers, going, so yeah, I mean, it definitely takes all of us, all those hours, but we need to come up with a better plan, for sure.
Let me expand a little bit. So give me averages. You've got a large area to isolate. How long is it taking before that pipe is drained and you pump the water out? It's probably 2-3 hours at least, isn't it?
Oh, at least, yeah, and you gotta think some of these valves that we're utilizing don't close all the way.
Correct.
So we're still pumping while we're working,
Right.
you know, and it takes quite a while.
So my question would be, would you need all 5 people there while you're still waiting for the line to drain and pump?
It sounds like they're all doing different projects.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to understand.
yeah, we definitely have different things going on. We got one guy with, you know, running the backhoe, we've got other guys that are running dirt on cause we've got a truck, so we're running base, you know, so we've got quite a few people doing different projects. So out of all 5 of us,
Well, over the course of the whole project, I understand that.
yeah,
I've seen where 4 people were out and they sat from 1 AM till 5 AM or 6 AM just for it to drain. And then they started working. Well, you could have left maybe 1 person there and the other 3 got some sleep.
Well, and I think that's probably the point of trying to find a good plan.
Yeah.
You know, and I totally agree with you. And I think that's where the plan needs to come into play on my part to come up with something so I don't have 5 guys working for 17 hours because it's gonna kill everybody. You know, it's undoable. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm working on. Like I said, I would like to get some good contractors that even maybe send us a couple laborers so we can pull off and come back, or, you know, like you said, come up with a better system to where we can send some guys home, come back, get some sleep. So yeah, I agree with you on that one. Something has to come with a better plan.
You're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
You, got thrown into the fire right away, and the fire's still going, and we're asking you to fix it. Well, I think we just need to.
Well,
make sure
challenge
that you-
accepted, but it's a tough one.
But thank you, you're doing an excellent job.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a couple more questions still. With all these leaks, is good documentation taking place? To Dennis's point, to qualify for certain grants, we need proof that we need these things. So the type of pipe that the water loss, the expense it took us to do all the work and whatnot.
Yes, I actually,
Just this leak report.
you know, I actually made a copy for you guys if you wanted all my leaks, that I've had. I keep, everything, so it's called the leak report. And, I've got every page, every time we have a leak, what kind of, hardware we put on the ground, what kind of size pipe it was, how many gallons we lost, everything. So how many man hours, everybody's name that was on the leak, how many hours we worked. So yeah, I've got documentation of all of it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you. The last question I had, when hiring a contractor to come and do some of the work, do you have a scope of work, what you expect them to be doing so that we get the job done right? With Axner, they would always bring in a viber plate and then we'd sing, then they'd charge us to fix their failures.
Yeah, no, I definitely would have a plan. I mean, if they're gonna come in, it's gonna be because I already know the places that I need help at. So, you know, it's
You understand what
definitely.
I'm asking as far as any contract we have with them, that it includes the scope of work that
Mhm.
they're accountable for us to pay them.
Yeah, I'm actually getting a list of, from each contractor, what they charge for all their, you know,
Okay.
their backhoe.
Components.
Exactly, so I have a list, so when that's something I need, I already know, okay, who, you know, what they're gonna charge me. So I like that, because I just don't like being surprised.
Okay, we've had some ugly ones.
Mhm.
She didn't get to meters.
Meters, yes, so we are, struggling with the meters and they're coming along well. We went from 2 weeks now to a week. We just started, replacing the registers, trying to get the system going with the register replacement, getting them installed into billing, getting billing jiving with Beacon. It's been kind of a hard setup, so it's still in place and we're still working on it, but it's getting a lot better, so I'm very happy with it.
And then, talk a little bit about the equipment we have and sort of the needs for the equipment and future equipment needs.
Yeah, we need a back truck.
Trailer.
Trailer, yeah, it's very bad. It's, we've been renting one, it's costing us about $600 every time we rent one. And, there, as you'll see, the service lines that I have on there, those right there, we could get 5 to 6 to 7 of those, knocked out. If we could get, you know, a back trailer where we can have it on site, where we can plan these things and just start knocking them out. It just seems that every time we have a back trailer, I think one time we had a planned service line, replacement plan, to where we actually got to get the back trailer and do some service lines. Everything,
You did like 4 of them in one
yeah,
day.
we did 4 of them in one day, so, but everything else has just been an emergency, you know, we just get the back trailer because it's an emergency situation, and if we had this back trailer, we could start doing these service line leaks and get up on our list, so.
Is there any equipment we could get rid of to help pay for the back trailer?
Our skid steer we use, our backhoe we use, and our truck we use, so that's.
Okay.
You
So
know,
no.
no.
That's fine.
Yeah, no,
But I don't know that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Did you ever have a chance to see how much it costs to lease back trailers?
No, not yet. Because, we need to send out an RFP for back trailers and include a lease proposal from them.
Was it you, Director Weaver, who mentioned that, vac trailers, even trucks, have, serious maintenance issues?
Yes.
So
My
buying
son-
one could be a nightmare potentially.
He said, my son-in-law that's what he does back trailers,
Mhm.
back trucks. And he just said that the maintenance on the back trucks are huge.
On the trucks, I would think, I
Yeah.
don't think so much
And
the
that
trailers.
he suggested that, that's why he suggested leasing a back trailer. He said for what we want really is a better bang for our buck. And that's what he does.
Could be good alternative,
Yeah, yeah.
A new one running 85 to 100 grand, how many years are we gonna, even at renting, even a dozen times a year, how many years is it gonna take to come up to that? And then factor in the maintenance over those years too, so it might be better for us to either rent or look for a lease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, she said we had 22 large leaks since July, so it's not a half a dozen times.
That's,
Well-
that doesn't include the service line leaks.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know, that's, yeah. So,
Well, let's get a $20 million grant to replace the infrastructure, and then we won't need.
I'm with you on that, yes, I'm with you on that.
Anybody else got questions for Martin? You have one?
I've got one.
Oh, we're not talking to the,
We'll get to you.
go for it.
I just wonder, why is it taking so long to read the meter? It used to take just a short time.
We went to a different system, so we're doing it auto, and, there's been some problem with the billing and the software is now, all changed up. So to try to get the software to jive with the billing, they're in different formats, and so,
Okay.
you know, and we also have a lot of old registers out there that when they did the new update on the software, it didn't pull the old registers, and so it actually gave them a different format from the old registers. So, there's the complication coming into play.
We also found out, Dennis, that a lot of the meters really weren't being read. They're doing a drive-by, it looks about this way, and write it down.
Yeah.
So they were not being read or they weren't being read accurately, or not read at all.
And also there are some registers that
That are not
have failed, that is
Yeah.
why we got all those new ones, and, they just need to be updated, so.
Which also made our manual list go way up because we have all these registers where the batteries are dying and they're not picking up auto. So, we went from, probably like 100, and now we've got almost, over 400 manual reads. So that takes a lot of time. So as long as we can start getting those, and that's gonna be my first hit, is getting those registers on those manual reads to take that labor cost away right there. So that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. She's the one who figured out what one of the problems are. She's the one who's done it.
Trying to, anyway. Getting there.
Anybody else?
Thank you for your hard work.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you.
I appreciate it, you guys.
I enjoy seeing you back.
So I think, as I mentioned to the board, in December, we expect to have, from Pace Engineering, their initial engineering review of the treatment plant's, needs, which includes the train sticks and all the rest of those. So we'll have, Bill here, to do, that, as well as any other, items related to, the treatment plant or the treatment division.
Say that again about train six, what are you gonna have next month?
Well, the engineer has been reviewing all of the treatment plant's needs, including all of these trains that are out of operation, to give us an engineering estimate of the cost.
Oh, an estimate, okay. Not a report, but he would.
Well, it's a combination of an engineering report and an estimated cost for all of, that's what we need to go put it out.
Okay,
to
so
get-
tell me Merry Christmas, it's not bad. Oh, you can't tell me that?
can't tell you anything, because I haven't seen it yet.
No. Okay.
So, and I think just based on, this, I think it might be beneficial, maybe quarterly, to have, Bill and Morgan come and do their operations report this way, and we can ask questions and
Yeah.
all that stuff. The next item is sort of related to, the operations report. It's, item 6C, the district staffing needs and plans. The board's had, some questions about our staffing. I reported to them, to you, both at the finance committee and, at the board in August, about, sort of what we were doing with our staff and how we could afford it with our budget. One of the board members asked the chair, can we have an item on our agenda that, just kind of has that laid out? So this memo is not the greatest, but at least tries to lay out, our three divisions. We've got our administrative division with account clerk, admin assistant, bookkeeper, accountant. Treatment division used to be 2.5 employees with a chief plant operator, a T3, and then a T3, D3 half or part-time there. So now we have a chief plant operator, a T3, and then a treatment operator in training. As you know that already, since you approved that side letter that created that position. And then the distribution division, we have one distribution supervisor, and then we have, currently we have 3 D1s and 1 D2. It used to be 4.5 plus. We had a D3, T3 that was in that position that was split between the two. Truthfully, spent probably more of their time in the distribution division. And so when we put together the budgets, we always put together fully filled at step 4. So that's why the budget can handle 4 distribution operators at the D2 or D1 level, step 1. One of the things that happened over the last few months, in the April and May time frame, we lost all of our operators, all of them. So that put us into a bit of a bind. Fortunately, we had Morgan start July 8th. We had hired 2 D1s in May to replace the first 2 that had left. And they, one of them did not eventually pass their D1 license test. The other did, and is still with us. We then also, and then the third D1 passed their test within weeks of starting with us near the end of May, and he just passed his probation today. And then, and then based on Morgan's thinking, we said, well, let's make sure that we have 4 people in that division. So we hired a replacement for the one that didn't, pass their D1 exam. And then we also added an employee that already had their D2. They moved into the district and started about a month or so ago. And combination of reasons, as you've heard, there's a need for that many people to work on all the leaks. We've also reduced the time for meter reading. And also, if we have somebody leave, or have 2 people leave all at once, we're not completely decimated in the division. So that's a combination of reasons for that. On your budget side of things, at the bottom of the second page, I think, I don't know, it looks like I'm missing a paragraph. The first paragraph was going to be just to show that in the treatment division, having 3 employees in that division was completely covered by our budget. I think our budget for the treatment division is $250,000 with a full-time operator in training, even if they pass before the end of this fiscal year, which probably not possible to be full-time T3, depending on the hours. We're under the $250,000 budget. And then in the distribution side of it, our budget is $365,000. July 8th, when I ran the first estimated cost with the currently 4 employees all at step 1, you can see we had a $271,000 potential expense for the year. And then if we added a D3, which wasn't planned, but it just max cost, then your cost would be $341, but in actuality we added a D2. And so the total for 5 employees is $332,000. Now that does not completely take into account, the potential for overtime and other items. You will see in your next item, which is your actuals to budget, that we were right at budget for last year for the distribution division, because there was quite a bit of overtime in that year too, so it got us right up to the top. The other paragraph is we fully acknowledge that having a full-time added employee, that it increases our pension obligation. Currently, it's at $72,000, but we budgeted $80,000. An additional employee would add close to $5,000 to that, so we would still be within budget. And again, that budget was calculated on everybody being at step 3 or 4. And the same thing for the healthcare cost. It adds to that cost, but we budgeted for the maximum. So I'll let Morgan speak to just some of the other she already did actually speak to some of the operational stuff.
Yeah.
One of the other value right now is Morgan has a Class B.
Yeah.
Class B, one of our employees got his Class A while he was here. He was in another program that it paid for through, I guess, a job service program.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last D1 that we hired, who already had their D1, also has their Class A.
Yeah.
So just having a pool of more people that can actually drive the dump truck is helpful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So it was me who asked,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to, and just so Bill, and Morgan, and Paul already knows, because I made it clear. The reason that I asked, and the other board members that were sitting with me, is why we're trying to really keep the budget as necessary, but as low as possible, because our priority this year, Bill, was to get you a new train. We wanted to get it done by making sure that we stuck to the budget and had enough to do it. We're not gonna be able to do it, but that's our priority. And if we keep increasing our budgets, I mean,
Complement.
our income is not increasing. We're not having houses built out here, or we're getting lots more people out. So our income isn't increasing, so we just have to be really careful of our expenses, and I do appreciate how carefully you do watch it. But I think that until we, because the idea I put before Paul, not really legal, but, you know, what we need to do is buy a whole bunch of pipe, and when we have a leak, Morgan, you're gonna go in and fix a little more. Because otherwise, you're gonna have to go to the county and play their game, and that's gonna be terrible.
We do have some opportunities though coming up, because in the last election, Prop 4 was passed, and it does include approximately $10 billion for water districts, so I'm hoping we can get a couple of grants going, and you're tracking the leaks like you are, should help in that process.
So that being said is that I don't believe we can afford to have any more staff for a while until we get some of our big problems taken care of. And it's what Bill has been telling us for 2 years at least, very loudly, and we have heard you, that that the treatment plant needs help, and very, very much needs help. You know that we need water lines. We've got to get water lines sections done. I mean, right now, there's three that I can think of that, you know, we just need to try and put them in sections. I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we've got, but it takes money.
So back in 2019, 2020, that was the whole community, the numbers and the personnel that was on board before everybody started jumping ship. But we had salaries that were just out of control.
There was like 16 people.
Yeah, and so that was one thing the community said, was to really watch your complement. And so as we keep in, my glasses don't step. You know, we look at what the complement and what it needs. So when you say 5 people, that's including you, correct?
Correct.
So are we happy with what we have right now, and we don't foresee any additional staffing?
That 5th person made a big difference. It definitely helped.
And I do understand the vacations and scheduling and needing to have rotation, so hopefully that's a decent enough complement. I think part of that though is that, and one of my concerns that we voiced last time was, do we need a cap, or do we need, I said the word concern, don't write that down. I spoke about it.
Drop the pen.
It's been recorded.
Is do we need to have something in writing about a complement cap, or any future over 12 employees? I don't know the wording. I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I don't understand what you're trying to get at.
Okay, so this last person,
Number of employees.
so this last person that Paul hired didn't require us to approve it or not approve it. He could just go ahead and do it.
Because
Okay.
it fits the budget.
But if we're trying, yeah, because it fit the budget, okay?
And we had to approve the union thing,
Yeah.
which we all did.
Yeah.
What union thing?
The,
Side letter.
The operator
Operator
training.
training. and
Yeah.
Oh, well, that
training.
was for the,
Treatment plant.
yeah, that's something a little bit
but Paul
different.
talked to us about everything that he's hired.
I'm not saying he didn't talk to us, but we didn't have to approve it. He could just go and do it.
Well, I think we approved, but, you know,
But we didn't,
no,
we didn't.
we didn't do an official,
Correct,
right?
correct. And that's why I'm just wondering, do Do we need to say, right now, we've got 12 employees and we have a complement, our full complement, anything above that? Because when we get to cross connections here, are we gonna need to hire somebody? Because that's an ugly report, by the way.
I know, don't depress me anymore.
Yeah, I
Tell me
know.
But if we say that, you know, this is all we're ever gonna have, and then something comes up,
Right,
Then what are we gonna
right,
do?
that's my,
Board
yeah.
approval or anything.
Right, but that's my question, is that appropriate, not appropriate?
Huh?
You know? So, I mean, if you've got your full maximum capacity, are we gonna,
It's all-
can we just,
talk about it.
are we just gonna be able to hire another person who up our budget a little bit? You know?
Well,
You
what we
don't think there's any concern?
I don't have a concern, and, you know,
Oh, the wrong word.
I don't have, whatever.
Issue.
You know, Paul brings it to us that he wants to hire, and then all we have to do is say no. And we can do that, you know,
Well,
through the minutes.
I think the other thing we could do, and maybe when we get around to, two ways that I think you could potentially handle it is when we adopt a budget, you can have in there a policy that says our current FTE staffing is X, and if there's any more than that, in other words, if you're replacing to get to
Right, no
X,
problem.
but if you have any more than that, or you could even just say, it's currently at X, if it's anything more than X plus one, the board's gotta approve it, plus it would be a budget adjustment anyway, so you'd have to have a budget, that kind of. So that's one way that I've seen, I think I'm understanding what you're saying.
You are.
You could also do it as another way, but again, I think this triggers that discussion. I think as we get to an opportunity time, probably in January, when we'll have our first budget to actuals for 6 months, and we have to make some potential budget adjustments, that's when you could give direction to say, hey, we want a policy statement in our budget that has something like that. So that's one way. I'll look and see if I can find you other ways in which you can do that. But basically, this.
Yeah. I mean, this employee that we hired is basically $90,000 when you include all the things. And it's just like, we so carefully at that one finance planning for FY25 was trying to set aside $300,000 for this training that we've got to do. And hopefully it's not a heck of a lot more than that. But if we keep hiring, that's my concern. When can we start really fixing these things or saving money to be able to fix these things?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Beverly did mention the $90,000 number. If you guys flip to 6D, you look at the line that says the O&M, $80,000 over as reported to the board in March of 2024 at the third quarter FY24. Okay. My major concern here has everything to do with major repairs. These are things that it does not seem like we're getting away from. They're going to remain the way that they are. These budgeted savings that we have, we do not fill a position of D3 or D2, free up a good chunk to cover the budget overages in the O&M for major repairs. My question to you, Morgan, is are you going to be able to eliminate any of these emergency contractor calls on these big leaks if you do have an extra body?
We already have. We've taken on a lot of these leaks because we have that extra body. So yeah, definitely. I just gotta like I was coming up with a better plan on organizing the long nights is really what I need to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you're still gonna see that the cost of leaks is not just overtime, man hours, and contractor, and I don't know because our bookkeeping is behind, but I know we're over budget on that even this year, let alone the last year that you referenced. But, you know, one of the other things that just the cost of inventory, replacing our inventory, when we have couplings on 10-inch pipes, that's expensive. So, you know, looking for ways down the line, if we do get a grant to replace it, should we replace it with PVC and maybe put an 8-inch line in so that the cost of leaks goes way down? Those kind of are different things, but down the road. But I think, you know, ultimately, there was 4.5 in this division, and now there's 5, you know, so, and there were 2.5 in the other division, now there's 3. So there's, effectively, that's 1 extra. I don't foresee there being any need for more at this point, but I do think if the board wants to have some policies as it relates to any future additions, then that we can do that, other than what we've already done.
So we'll table it until we get to the budget, but I just wanted to bring it up because I wanted Bill and Morgan to understand, you know, kind of our thinking too. Our goal is to get you pipe and get you trains.
Can I just, add to, on what he was saying about the hardware? I just want you guys to realize too, the amount of hardware and the expense of the hardware that goes into the ground. It's, you know, these macros that we have to replace this pipe with, it's very, very expensive. I mean, we're looking at $8 grand in macros on an 18-inch before we even jump in the hole and start. You know, so it's a lot of money to be replacing this big a pipe. I think our benefit would be to start downsizing some of this pipe, so when we do have to replace it, we're not looking at, you know, $8 grand in macros just to get 2 couplings on the end of pipe. I mean, it's a lot of money, and then you've gotta replace that, because if you get another break, you've gotta make sure you have it. So I just want you guys to be aware of the kind of money that's in the hardware just going in the ground around here.
So that doesn't affect the ag people that have some of these 4-inch
Yeah, I mean,
lines?
it's one thought to
It's
have
a
it
thought,
that way,
and I
but
wanna,
ultimately, you can't do that unless you do some engineering to figure out
Yes.
if that's
Yeah.
possible.
but it's a thought that, you know, maybe down the line, we can look into something to where we can start, you know, maybe downsizing. I mean, 14-inch, 18-inch pipe, that's, you know, 10-inch, you know, but yeah, it's very, very big macros going in the ground, very expensive. So.
Anybody else got any questions? Dennis?
Well, you know, sometimes I think I'm kind of getting, better work, but, because I know it's difficult, but, you know, the general budget and fixing these lines is expensive. You gotta get some funding, and, you know, a state is broke, and, the incoming president, probably the federal dollars are gonna start drying up. So, you know, the board, and you need to talk to your supervisors, your congressmen, your senators, and push and get these grants pushed going and get them, and get the funding coming in. Because if you don't, like FEMA grants, they just go on, and you don't get the funding. And, the fire safety council, I mean, they're 2 years, I think they're going on the 3rd, and they still haven't really got the full funding coming in to do a project. And you just really need to push, and I'm not talking about Paul, because I know Paul works all the time on it. But the board, you folks, have got to talk to your supervisor, congressmen, senators, and state and federal, and push these things, and get them approved, and get that funding coming.
We're sitting on what, a $5 million one, waiting for the state to fund it?
Yeah, in my GM report, I'll talk a little bit about some of that, but we have reached out again on the distribution fund grant funding. As you recall, earlier this year, probably February, the state called us and said, "We got a budget crisis, we're not gonna even look to fund yours." So hopefully we're back in the queue.
Yeah.
But, remember, we're a small district. We managed a $477,000 grant to repair the South Booster and electrical SCADA and grant improvements. We got a $6 million project going on at the treatment plant right now, and we've had to use a loan to try to manage that. So as much as we want, as much money as we can, there's only so much that we can manage. But the timing, if we could get a distribution system grant in the next coming 9 to 12 months would be fantastic, because it would roll right on after these others. All right.
California has a housing crisis from border to border, and in Northern California we have a fire crisis. The primary tool to put out fires is water. Happy Valley, it butts up to the south end of the city of Redding, where there's probably 250 homes, and the semi-autonomous Indian Nation, where they have structures worth $30 million, $40 million. The creek is probably a natural barrier, but we would be the fire break. We could stop that from going into those houses that are outside of the district, but in the city of Redding. Again, when you turn off on Canyon Road, they're off to the right, lots of these roads. And then there's development of houses, and we can't, let's say a developer wanna come in and put 300 units. We can't give them water right now, can we? Do we have to build a pipeline, let's say half a mile, and do all the distributions? Do we have that ability?
Yeah.
Without a grant?
Well, first of all, the developer came in and wanted to develop a couple thousand acres of, they would tap into whatever the closest main is, which we would have available, and then they would have to put in all the infrastructure for their houses.
So the only thing that this agency would have to do is be sure to supply the water.
Correct.
That's the only thing.
And we have a contract with the Bureau that has sufficient water for that kind of development or increase other development. Most areas in which there would be, we would have a sufficient size pipe.
Do we have a need for another storage tank? There's a huge one at Cloverdale.
Yeah.
So we do have a need for that, and what do one of those things cost?
If we had another one of the ones that we have up there, it's a 4 million gallon tank, it probably costs $6 to $8 million. Used to be about $1 million per million gallons, but it's gone up.
The state throws money away, and we have a reason, fire break, where the fire people put it out with water, and then for housing development, it would be maybe not 100% solid, but it'd be a good reason to get a grant. They give grants for things for which there is no good reason.
Yeah. Well, it's a valid point. I will just mention to the board, it is why I applied for an EPA grant that I called the Wildfire Resiliency Program, and it was a request for $500,000 to review all of our fire suppression system, fire water supply for water, because I knew what it would find is we needed more or better strategically located hydrants for fire suppression and the fire break, and more storage. And then we could use that to go get a grant for that. But just so you know, we got turned down on that grant, but that's okay. Ask once, you get to ask again. Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready for 6D.
Okay?
The Finance Committee already saw this last week. Again, I'll just restate the challenge has been since March when we converted to CUSI. It wasn't until August until that the bookkeeper informed me that the transactions from CUSI to QuickBooks wasn't happening correctly. It was then that it was discovered that the COSI was sending them in the accrual basis, and we were still kind of in that half cash, half accrual arena. Since then, after it's been a great effort by Melissa to get all of that reconciled up through June, actually up through July, through June, because the primary reason is that in July, I had expected and hoped that we would have this report before you, which is all of our actuals for the full fiscal year compared to budget. So sort of the bottom line is our revenue is significantly higher than budget. It's about 449,000 more. Most of that is in 332,000 over budgeted in the base rate. We also had an increase in our designated revenue, and we had an increase in our property tax revenue. So in the first two, a lot of that has to do with the fact that between March and the end of the year, that all those numbers are the accrual. In other words, those are what is billed, not actually what cash came in. The other thing too, as you recall, this past fiscal year, we're in November, so it seems like a long time ago. But you recall, we got a lot of money from LEWAP. Significant amount. I mean, it was over $100,000 of from the state funding assistance for those that weren't able to pay their bills, and so quite a bit of that those overages, and you saw those overages in a lot of those early months. In treatment, you'll see that everything is at or under budget except for the O&M. And the finance committee and I both questioned some of those items, so Bill's been looking at some of the line items. Some of them are not actually supposed to be in there, they were miscoded.
Yeah.
The other over budget item in distribution is related to locates, or the 811 calls. That's 5,000 over budget. A lot of that based on PG&E activity and all the others that keep calling us on this. You've heard me complain about this before. That it's a real challenge, getting so many locate calls. And then, not long ago, we found out that MGE, which was the contractor for PG&E, that did the undergrounding all along Happy Valley Road. First of all, they call for locates. You go out and do the locate, mark it with blue paint. PG&E engineers come out, and then they design where they're going to put the pipeline. By the time they get out and mobilize, the locate is expired, so then you got to get called again, and then they just keep calling you as they run down the road. And then in July or June, actually when Tony was here, we found out one of the MGE employees had set up on his laptop an automatic call every 30 days for like 8 or 10 locations. And he no longer worked for the company and didn't turn off his automatic calls. And as you know, MGE has not been in the area for almost 12 months now. Inventory and tools are quite a bit over budget. You might recall that Unit 3 had to have all of their tools replaced earlier in this calendar year. The inventory is really because of all those leaks replaced. When we grab out of inventory couplings and pipe and all the rest of that stuff, we got to put it back in inventory so it's available. As Director Johnson mentioned, our O&M is $80,000 over. That's from all of, and I think I reported to you in March that was running over. So that's a lot of that was you might recall last October in 2023. We had a lot of big leaks, and we had a lot of Actioner projects. We had Palm Drive that had that very deep pipe that had to go over. We saved quite a bit less than what we thought on our wells and boosters. We obviously haven't needed them because there's no drought. We had reported to you before that our vehicle insurance was gonna come in, it came in way more than we had thought. It was $63,000 to insure all of our vehicles. So this fiscal year, our budget is up around 60,000, and that's what it came in at. Our audit services were over. You might recall our HMS auditor took an extra 12 months to get the FY22 audit completed. So we had to pay them extra for that audit. In your report, there's also about $5,000 that was miscoded. It's supposed to be in a different location, and again, we'll get that for you for December. And then of course, the auditor fired us, so we have on the street RFP. One of the other things we decided in the middle of this fiscal year is to figure out a way to track our grant costs and our grant reimbursements. And Director Pickus at our Finance Committee brought this up, and so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it again, that we need to remove that, because the grant reimbursements overinflates our revenue by $1,887,000. And there are organizations, LAFCO being one, Aqua, I think our dues, another, and there might be another one, that all take whatever we report to the state controller's office as our revenue, and they base our fees on that. And we don't need that in there for that, because it's not revenue, it's reimbursing for an expense on the other side. I will just mention though, one of the revenue accounts that's mentioned in here, that again is not necessarily revenue, but it was actually funds out of CERVIC for the OPEB fix and the return to the employees. The employees that were with us at the time, their OPEB contributions, that shows up as an expense under the salary side of things. So one of the things that's really a bummer about this report is it's inaccurate, because when you get down to your total net income, it looks like we have $634,000 of net income, and we're like, woo-hoo, we're really rolling in the clover. But we're not. A couple things. One, the expenses do not include the designated revenue. So all the fees that are on everybody's bill, for budgetary purposes, you cannot, since you can't use that money for anything other than its purpose, you can't use it for operations. For budgetary purposes, we have it under 7,000 to expense it out, so you don't use it. And so, as you can see, there's not actual expenses here, because that money goes under the accrual accounting system. It's revenue that goes into a reserve account, and it shows up on your balance sheet. And the other one is money that's going into the operating and capital improvement reserves, which is the 4.1% of usage and 1.8% of base rate, respectively, are not identified here because they're on your balance sheet. So I guess long and short of all of that, and I think I have it in your report, is if you back out, you get that designated to reserve, and you get the other items out of there, your gross revenue is actually 3.7 million. Your gross expenses are 3.4 million. So there's a fund balance of $270,000, but again, that's with the last 5 months of the year under the accrual basis. Bookkeeper's out on medical this week, and did give me a cash, try to figure out the cash report on this, or the difference between what was in the accrual revenue versus what was actually in cash. It still needs some work, so we'll we'll get that to the finance committee, next month. But I can report to you that it looks to me like we are, in the positive, or at least of about 61,000.
What?
Yeah,
Wait a minute, go back.
no,
How did we go from 270,000 to 61,000?
because that was the accrual.
Because there's a difference of about 209,000 between what was billed in the revenue and what was actually received, in other words, what people paid us for. Yeah, that's just round figures. Before we actually get the final report, we get the bookkeeper back from medical to do those reports.
Okay, because it was not, okay, because when I read this, it says this is accrual.
Right.
Accrual
Okay.
is just what's not received.
Right,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
And the bottom line is, we set that budget to even out over the course of the year, so we're
Yeah, 'cause this
plus
is last
60,000.
year's.
Yeah. So, now, I haven't been able to dive, this was 32 pages of that cash, report. That's where I come up with our difference, but I haven't been able to go look at each individual line item to make sure that it's right, so that still needs to be done.
However, if we collected all the money, we would be in.
We'd be at 270, yes.
Yeah,
But you can see on your operations report, there's $100,000 outstanding just
Yep.
related to that, right? Just people that haven't paid and all that. And that still needs to be, it's forensic review. I just would mention, again, one of the things we've instituted over the last 18 months is giving you the balance sheet. This still needs work to be done on it. We did obviously change over banks on July 1. I'll just give you an example of one item that's not correct on the balance sheet. It shows that our long-term liability, we have a debt to the WIN Act of $1,099,000. I have no idea where that is. That has no relationship to the original what we owed, which was $859,000, and the fact that currently it's a zero. So that would improve our position by at least $1 million, just that line item alone, correct? So again, still work in progress. I guess what we reported to the finance committee is that we will have a finance committee meeting in the second week of December to review the auditor RFPs. We'll also have this report updated and for the board, and then the other is to have all of our activity and P&Ls between from July through November available for the board. And since we missed our first quarter budget to actuals and budget adjustment, we're aiming for January meeting to where we'll have 6 months budget to actuals, and then we'll have the hash out where we will need to make some adjustments. Plus, we will have had the report on the treatment plant in December.
When we do that, I'd like to have this fiscal year we've been reviewing with us at that time, so we can identify the challenges and see where it is in our current fiscal budget to help us guidelines for the adjustments we want to make.
Without a doubt, accurate financials at the end of the year will make budgeting. The other thing, as I mentioned to the finance committee, that I'm looking forward to as we get these caught up is, twice a month we review payables. We have check signers that come in and review payables. Right now, we don't have the plan is to have when there's an expense, O&M is probably an easy one, right?
Yeah.
And say, okay, well we currently have spent this much in that account, and our budget is this, And this bill fits into that budget. Well, this one doesn't. Well, we can't pay it until we come back from the board, or at least we figure out, or we come up with a policy that it's gotta be within a certain percentage, and then we gotta come back and, you know.
Are you sharing those budget numbers with your distribution and treatment supervisors?
Yeah, they've seen them all.
Okay, so that's sort of a guideline of what they can spend.
But
I know.
they're in the same,
Things happen.
challenge that I'm in other words, this FY '24 is the most current that we have.
Yeah.
I also wanna just thank the finance committee for spending a lot longer than we just spent to go through all this stuff.
Only an hour and a half.
And thank the board for their willingness to spend a bunch of time on it next meeting too.
We looking at any action on this, or are you?
No, this is really just a report. Mr. Chairman, I think we'll move to item 6E. You're free to go if you want to. Unless you want to talk about this item.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Morgan.
I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
talking with you.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too. Nice talking with you guys too.
All right, item 6E, this is the cross-connection control handbook update. I think the first time I reported to the board on this was in about a year ago now. The state had held a workshop on impending regulations related to cross-connection control. At the time, the Association of California Water Agencies, AWWA, and a lot of others had made a lot of comments, and they kind of went underground for a while and then came up with what we have before us. This is a fairly major regulatory item for districts. It is their stated goal is to protect the public health and the establishments and standards intended to ensure public water system, drinking water distribution system will not be subject to backflow of liquids, gases, or other substances. You know, a lot of this is also generated not just with a lot of districts that have had issues with insufficient backflow or contamination, but the fires of the last 10 years, and most specifically the Paradise Fire. The Paradise is a gravity flow system. As the fire took on the water system and the water system shut down, multiple houses and buildings burned as the fire went down and across the hill. And what had happened was the water, as it flowed out the bottom of the system, created a suction, and it sucked in a lot of contaminants from houses that burned, pipe that burned. A little bit in the Tubbs fire in the Santa Rosa area, but that was a PVC pipe that burned or melted, and even though they had most of the backflow devices, it isolated the contamination. So that's one reason that this regulation is going forward. But as I said in here, this is an unfunded mandate, and so we have to figure out a way to comply. So I put in your packet the full document, except for all of its appendixes and everything else. My apologies for it being so long, but I tried to cut it down. There's a list of items that need to be included. You have to have operating rules and ordinances for your program. In other words, first you have to create a program. So at some point, the board's going to have to either add it to its administrative or its water service policies, or do a separate ordinance. You are supposed to have a designated cross-connection control program coordinator. So this could be a potential staff member requirement. You will have to have a hazard assessment, so we will have to do a survey of all of our connections in the district. And then you have to have a backflow prevention plan that requires some ensures actual and potential crossroad connections are eliminated. The program can only be created by a certified backflow specialist, and that's different than a tester. There's some record keeping, there's also requirements, there's a backflow incident response and reporting and notification procedure, public outreach and education, and then coordination. So, as you can imagine, just about everybody in Shasta County that works in water, except for the city of Reading, is trying to figure out how to deal with this. City of Reading's large enough, they already have specialists on staff. I put in here an example. The city of Anderson decided to implement, to comply by creating a new staff position. And so they recently stuck it in the rate proposal and rate study. And in February or March of this year, their council approved their rates. 6% a year is their increase. The first year is a 24% increase, and that's all paid for the hiring of a new employee. All, I mean, above the 6 or 8% that would have been for other things. The city of Shasta Lake's looking at using staff resources for this. They're also looking at potentially contracting it out. Bella Vista was looking at potentially staff, but they're still not sure what they're going to do. They also are considering looking at contracting it out. I believe the best way to do this for us is to look at ways to contract it out. I've reached out to the city of Anderson to see if we can put together a little MOU or JPA to basically pay for their specialist time to help us put together our program. Or we could, and then maybe even pay for a certain number of hours a month for them to go do whatever else they would need to do as a specialist. I think we could probably handle the survey, but you know, there's two components to the survey. You gotta send out everything and inspect it and look at it, but then you also have to have a backflow tester or specialist make sure that they don't need something. I will say that one of our issues is going to be, we do have some commercial properties here that don't have backflow devices. We happen to have a couple of firehouses that I don't think have backflow devices. They are not cheap. So, you know, how to put a property owner in a program is going to be something we have to negotiate with the state. They haven't come down with any hard and fast thing. In other words, if you identify a place that needs it, but they have to have one within X amount of months. They haven't really said that. We have to put that in our program. So there's, those are some of the ideas. Bella Vista has had a proposal from outside consulting company. I don't think they're actually based in California, but their initial cost for implementation for 5 years was $500,000. So. So yeah, it does not please me to bring this to the board, but I think I warned you a year ago. Now it's starting to become reality. The other thing that's really challenging, as you can see from this, it's effective July 1 of 2024, and they give you 1 year to be in compliance with it.
You know, it almost sounded like they need two people. One that's the specialist and then a tester. And are we testing every year? Would they have to test every home every year?
No, you just have to test the devices. I mean, currently we have an outside contractor doing that.
Right.
We did talk to them about, are they interested in becoming a specialist, and we can contract with you to help us with that portion of it. And they're contemplating that, but right now, I think we could continue to have that program of having that tester do the annual test for us, give us our report. And then, if they find a failing one, we send a letter and they have to.
So who's the specialist that requires this training to do all of this?
The program and all the rest,
Yeah,
that's a tester who has taken more education and passes a test to become a specialist, a state test.
so is that difficult?
That's, I don't know. It's kind of subjective. I think it's not easy. You also have, annual or biannual updates, not unlike your D1s, D2s, and D3s certifications or your Ts. You have to get recertified. But,
So is it cheaper then to spend $100,000 for another employee?
well, that's what we gotta have to figure out.
So this, consultant that you're recommending we hire, would this be to put together a 5-year plan?
I didn't make any recommendation.
Okay, well,
What I want to get from either a consultant or from the city of Anderson, what it would take for them to have their specialist,
okay.
draft our plan so that we are compliant with the state requirements to have a specialist draft.
Right, which would fall under, what was it, 3.1.310B, which is on page 15. Connection control program must be developed in consultation with a cross-connection control specialist if, and that's where we fall, because we have more than 1,000 connection, but less than 3,000, so we don't necessarily have to have a permanent on-staff specialist.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that I neglected to mention. If we were over 3,000 connections, we wouldn't really have an alternative. We would have to hire somebody to do that.
So that specialist could consult with, just a suggestion, planning and steering committee to put together the plan. And then we pay this person as a consultant. And would that then be a one-time fee versus then having our tester company come in and do the annual?
I don't know for sure, but I think it would be a one-time fee for the plan development.
Okay.
But there may be an ongoing cost for the plan maintenance, other than the tester. But I
Record
don't
keeping,
know.
I know, can be challenging.
That's a particular that's before I know.
Okay, so if I read through this correctly, we have to have a plan in place by July 1 of next year.
Yep.
Okay. So, how are we gonna do that? And should it be in consultation with board members or not?
Well, I think we have to wait on some of the avenues that Paul has explored right now and see where that gets us before we start spinning our wheels to a lot of areas, because if he can get Anderson to help us, and in some respects we'll be helping them because we'll be paying more of their guy's salary, then that would be an easy way for us to move into the program. But we don't know what Paul's working on, I think, good alternatives.
Yeah, I think two things. One, this was brought before you with the information that I had in hand. Haven't really talked about it for probably about 6 months when I mentioned it in the GM report. So I wanted to get you more documentation and information and background. Second of all, I am working on all these different ideas because we don't have yet what we're exactly going to do. So if I've got something for you, in December, I'll bring it to you. I'll probably more bring you an update and then look for an implementation plan in January. This is what this is a way in which we can comply.
So that I fully understand, what is this cross connection? Is it more like a backflow type of thing is what
Yeah.
they're referring to?
Air gas.
So are we talking about like where our meter hook up and from the house, that kind of a backflow?
So, yeah, I mean, first of all, it is a backflow device. They obviously use the more generic term because they use cross-connection control, primarily because there's a variety, and, you know, if I had left, you can see in all the appendixes, which I did not give you because it was, there's all kinds, was previously mentioned on a lot of water trucks, there's an air gap. Well, that air gap is a cross-connection control device. It's not necessarily a backflow device. It is, but it's a different kind. But yes, the backflow devices are all to make sure, in most cases, it's a situation where, in our case, you have somebody that has a well that is irrigating their land, but they have that well water that goes into their barn. We have to make sure that that well water, if there was ever a backwards flow on the system, that it couldn't get sucked back into our system. And so that's the backflow device. In other words, it stops any water coming back, less water going.
So we're not talking about individual Joe Blows that just has a residential home with no well, or are we?
Well, one thing that this requires is all of those have to be surveyed, but they don't necessarily have to have a device.
Okay.
But the one other thing that's here, which is causing, like I said, there's others that have bigger problems than we do on this, but, you know, all of our stores in this district should have a backflow device, because if they have any, like, they're washing vegetables, or they're washing meat, I don't know, whatever it might be, somehow that is, and remember, that's why it's a little fuzzy, but there's a term that they use here, district is required to ensure all actual and potential cross connections are eliminated.
Yes.
So, that means you have to check everybody, even if you say, now, there's no potential. If you have to actually do that.
Schools.
Yeah, the schools, I don't know what we're gonna do about the schools if they don't have one in the right place, if the program and the specialists decide they need one. I mean, that's gonna be an expense to them. There's no funding, obviously, in this regulation.
We had to put them on all hose bibs in Arizona when I was down there, at all the houses.
Is that almost like an anti-siphon, or is that something different?
I don't know.
Well, when we built the house, we had to have all of our
Oh, yeah.
spigots had to have
Yeah,
those
Yeah, those
anti-siphons,
anti-siphons.
which were,
That pretty much acts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bill
Little
could describe
brass
to you
thing.
what a backflow is pretty easily, I'm sure.
What you're talking about is a hose bib vacuum breaker, and that's plumbing code,
Yeah.
but that is not an approved backflow prevention device. An approved device is a double check assembly, a reduced pressure principle device, and there's a couple other ones, but they have to be testable. It gets very complicated when you talk about potential cross connections, cross contamination. That could be almost anybody. 'Cause you gotta protect against both kinds of, backflow, back pressure and back siphonage. And, you know, when there's a mainline break and everybody's house is drained, there's that siphonage.
Yeah.
So-
about that, yeah.
Anytime there's a secondary water source, someone's storing water, rainwater, well, that's just on residences, that doesn't count for, restaurants that can have, soda machines, ice machines, things like that. And then as far as the schools go out here, I think all the schools have backflow devices, approved devices.
I tried to ask Morgan this and I didn't understand her response. What does the backflow testing entail? How are they conducting the tests? What are they actually performing or observing or monitoring? How do they determine if it is indeed still operable or if it's failed?
So the device is typically just downstream of the meter, right after the meter. That's where it's supposed to be. Each device has different components. So it has check valves or relief valves. Every one of those components have to be tested in a specific order. So, like for an RP or reduced pressure principal device, there's 2 check valves and a relief valve, and those have to be tested and recorded that they seal, or they hold a specific differential pressure, or that they just seal tight. Not to get off on every device, but that's kind of the gist of it. So you're testing the component of each device.
And so if you reduce pressure, in other words, you have a mainline break, and it's gonna come back, that device has to seal so that nothing comes from.
You were just
So
applying
you're
different
using-
pressures at different components.
Yeah, you're using a differential pressure gauge.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, so, sorry, I didn't explain it correctly.
Oh, no, it's okay. You knew exactly what you were talking about, so.
Yeah, I was a backflow tester for 10 years, just recently let it expire.
Well, shame.
I got it once, I can get it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are options like that, and again, back to Director Fix's comment, like I said, there may be a reason to have, or one of our current employees get it and implement certain things, but I don't think we're gonna have a specialist on staff within the next 8 months or so. And that's, I don't think, a necessary thing. Mr. Chair, unless there's anything else, thank you for letting me give you some, not great news. And I'll report, whenever I have updated information.
Thank you.
Item 6F, General Manager Employment Agreement, Amendment Number 2. On the district's website is the General Manager Employment Agreement and Amendment 1. That employment agreement calls for an annual performance review every October at minimum. And at the board's discretion, they can make some amendments to the agreement. So in your packet is based on the direction given. One, which is the salary compensation section. Section 6, just an added line to that. Section 9B, which is to fix the retiree medical paragraph. You might recall a year ago, we fixed it once, but since then we've had the OPEB fix, so this tracks the current district's policies related to retiring medical, so there's no difference for the general manager as it is for the employees. There's section 9C, which is the admin leave increased, and then 9D, the removal of the cap on sick leave accumulation. In your packet, there's a red line is probably not correct if it's printed in black and white, but at least has your hash out version, and then there's a clean version. It'll be, if approved, signed by myself and the chair. And then I think I was going to recommend that if we do any amendments next year, we should probably put them all together and make one, so somebody doesn't have to read online the agreement, the amendment, and then the other amendment, and then maybe a third amendment. So we'll do that next year. Usually after the third amendment, you combine them. this is an action item.
Anybody got any questions?
We've already discussed this in the closed session, so.
I don't know if the public has.
Anybody got any questions out there?
A motion.
I move to approve amendment number 2 of the GM employment agreement and authorize the chair's signature.
I'll second it.
All approved?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, GM report. Couple of items that I wanted to mention, other than what's in here or in addition. One is we did have a JPIA, Joint Powers Insurance Agency, here on site for training on last Tuesday. They did a defensive driver training and ergonomic training. And then the next day, we had that person, Paul Myers, our representative, visit the treatment plant, give us a kind of an updated report, and he's also working on a service plan in response to some of the safety issues that came up back in May or April of this year. So we're going to update our IIPP, our illness, injury and prevention plan, and some other items that were brought up with that. But also they reminded us that we had applied for a heat illness and prevention grant. You might recall I applied for ice machine and water and all kinds of different things, shade structures. We didn't get it. So we are applying again for another risk reduction grant. And this time we're applying for a grant to get a walk behind asphalt concrete saw. Right now we have a big circular saw version, and you gotta get on your knees and go do that. Another district was successful in getting a grant for a walk behind concrete saw, so piece of equipment to help our distribution staff would be nice. We talked a little bit already about some of the leaks and really the post-fire leaks. So we're working on a letter for the fire one, and we're also working on a letter and a bill for the well, for both of them, but also for the tree company that hit our wharfhead. Bill's obviously here today, but he'll be here next week to give you a further update on the treatment plant, but also Pace has promised that they will have their engineer's report, so we'll know some numbers as it relates to the repairs that we want to do. As it relates though to the Backwash Ponds project, we've got some pictures actually that I put in the operations report. We've got a few more updated pictures. That project is a little behind, I think. It was supposed to be pretty much completed by now and being tested now. We have about $2 million outstanding requested from Cal OES in the state for reimbursements. So, as we thought, they promised 90-day turnaround, and we'll be happy if it's 9 months.
Not at 8,600 a month interest.
Not super happy because we're paying interest on the RCAC loan. The other item just mentioned in here is the RFP for the audit services. We have received 2 proposals. We're hoping for at least 1 more. Our plan is to have that before the Finance Committee for a recommendation to the December board meeting, so we could sign that company, that CPA company, We put in our RFP that we have an expectation that they'll get 2 audits done in the first 6 months of next year, so hopefully that would happen and we'll get caught up. The other items are pretty much mentioned here, but I will just highlight that I will be at the Aqua JPIA meeting in December 1st and 2nd, and then the Aqua version, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Actually Monday's the 2nd. I'm sorry, 2nd through the 5th. And then I think that's it on that side. Operations report, as I mentioned, Amity's been fighting cold, and I thought it'd be best if she did not stay here this evening, but she put together the top part. As mentioned here, we did have 54 24-hour notices for shutoffs that occurred for 8 customers. Remaining customers paid in full or made payment arrangements. I think that delinquent accounts list is close to last month, actually.
Is the 280 accounts mostly the, base?
1081.
1081s.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I'm hopeful about by getting all of our accounting stuff caught up in getting the CUSI information caught up, is we can actually get these all identified and figure out exactly what we're going to do with them. Amity's, one of her tasks is to actually learn how to use the lien portion of the system for CUSI. They have the ability to actually put liens on properties, and once we figure out which ones of these, because ultimately there's a lot of these that probably just need to have liens put on and taken off of this list.
But you can update that lien amount as they fail to get caught up or pay.
Well, you know, a lot of districts run into this issue. Oftentimes they put a lien on a property for the amount that is owed as of the date that they put the lien on it.
Correct.
And that number doesn't change. So there is a way to put a lien on the property to identify that the amount owed as of that date is this, and it will be it'll be increased by, or whatever, July 1 of whatever year that the lien is paid off, that's what it'll be. So that's the little nuance that the CUSI system helps us with.
Is that recorded with the county that way? Because I have read that the county, Shasta County, had wanted liens submitted in the fall only.
Yeah, we'll do whatever Shasta County wants us to do about it.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's what they prefer as it relates to liens that are directly attributable to like a special district's assessment or those kind of things.
It's the property tax.
I mean, obviously liens are put on properties every day of the work year.
Well, that's true. Mechanics liens, whatever.
Under the treatment plant operations at the time, we did not have our M&I and ag. As you can see, we produced 454 acre feet and used 295. That breaks out into 229 for M&I and 67 for ag. It's a little rounding error there, but pretty much how that breaks out. You might recall there was we had a little break / leak. Pipe burst up there in October, and so we did have a welder get up there and do a repair. Bill can report more on that. And actually, Morgan already reported on the Friday. Just kind of where we're at with that. I gotta say, it's looking pretty fantastic. And,
Is it pretty, Bill?
Yep, looks like a patch.
It looks like a what?
Oh, we're talking about.
Now the pond,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's concrete now, most of
Yeah.
it.
is it pretty?
Yep. Looks like
we're
concrete.
gonna paint it blue or something?
Looks like a
Uh,
patch.
Do
Yeah,
we know,
looks like a patch.
What?
do we know how we're doing, on our estimated water usage, so how many acre feet of water we purchased from the common for tracking purposes as far as water usage for this water year?
Can you restate that question?
I'm interested in how many acre feet, we purchased or have processed through the treatment plant, and how that is percentage-wise on what we, plan on purchasing or estimating.
Well, as reported in here, there's 2,455 acre feet, that's, gone through there, but I think what you're asking for is,
We budgeted for a certain number based in our water rate and whatnot, on how many acre feet based on
Yeah.
chemicals, electricity, whatnot.
I don't think, we have that, cause that would be for, March 1 through now, and so I don't think we have necessarily that, but I mean, we have our, how much acre feet has gone through
It
there.
almost looks like we're a little, definitely ahead of last year. this
Oh,
time.
yes.
So,
We're quite a bit ahead of last year. Mostly because we're in the second year after a drought, so people, are starting to water again, do more of that. We kinda had a hot summer,
Yes,
and we
did.
had a hot fall too, up until today, or the last few days.
So you said McConnell water, but you really meant Bureau
I meant
water.
Bureau water.
Okay,
yes.
that's
If
what
I said
really-
McConnell, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We have none this year.
That's
No,
why I was
I'm
confused,
interested
but
in
I
You
figured.
figured it out, it took me a while to figure it
I
out.
thought we had estimated somewhere in the range of about 2,500 acre feet, since we were so much under our estimate last water year.
Yeah,
So I was curious, so if we've done 2,455, we are definitely ahead.
yes, and I think, we want to, get more, obviously, in domestic water, because it's looking like we may, who knows? I don't think we'll have a drought next year, but you never know. I left you a copy of just the pre-November, water storage, and just for information purposes, so you can start looking at those maps now that it rains, so that kind of thing.
I know website.
Getting an atmospheric river this early is kind of rare, so, but it could really help. As you know, the Lake Shasta yesterday was down 81 feet-ish to 82 feet.
Yeah, plus 82.
And, it's, the Bureau keeps saying, as long as we have a normal year, we'll definitely fill it back up. We don't even need much more.
Check in a week to see how.
Yeah, I
it's
see.
going.
All right, just the last thing, standing committees. We don't have an agriculture committee, scheduled until next year. And then there'll be some related to the farmer's market and other things. But the ag committee has been facilitating some olive, meetings. And, so, there's an olive, community meeting, I don't know how to put it. An association potential co-op meeting, that is gonna be here on December 11th at 6 or 6:30, until we figure it out.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned the finance committee meeting. Actually, it looks like we're gonna do it on December 10th.
We're gonna move it to the 10th instead of the 11th?
Yes,
I'm okay with that.
okay, well, I haven't heard from
That's
you on that.
finance committee.
Yeah, I know, I was gonna have them both on the same day, but it looks like finance is moving.
And then, planning and steering, I think we'll probably wait until January, just because the other thing is, as you know, there's that big spreadsheet with all those costs, and I kinda wanna see what the engineer tells us the costs are. I do wanna just remind you of one other thing, that I've informed the board on is, in January, I'm gonna ask you to appoint some members to a Centerville ad hoc committee. The Centerville agreement is, expires in 2027. And I've had some conversations with the general manager at Centerville, that why not work on it, start working on it now, instead of waiting till the last minute. And, we thought that it would be beneficial to have a couple board members from his district and a couple board members from this district, have an ad hoc committee and meet a few times, just to kind of get everything on the table as it relates to what's going forward. I'm calling it an ad hoc committee because I'm gonna specifically call it, say that it has a determined, goal, which is a renegotiated agreement, and it'll expire in 2 years. We'll figure it out at the time, but that's the plan. In other words, it wouldn't be a standing committee, but in our administrative policy, we can have an ad hoc committee. I'm suggesting that we do that in January. With that, it's to you all.
Okay, what do you got?
Just board member items, possibility of, if anybody else is interested, just visiting the treatment plant, see how the ponds come along, and maybe even look at the trains to better understand what is necessary. I wasn't sure if there was other interest by other board members.
I've still yet to tour it, so I'm very interested.
Okay?
I
don't know what you
I
remember.
mentioned it to Bill, and I think we'll do whatever and however. Maybe would it be easier if we did like a Thursday afternoon or something?
Yeah, this time of year, I'm very flexible, so, yeah, we had 10 trucks scheduled today, so,
You tell me what works best for you.
okay.
Okay.
Let me talk to my boss and I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we move up the meeting so we're not butting right into Christmas? Our board meeting?
You mean the December one?
Yeah.
I thought about that. It's obviously up to the board if you wish to do that. But the challenge, I think, is where would you move it to? Because if you move it a week ahead,
Bumps into the finance.
yeah. Hold on.
Not finance, but it's bumping.
But well,
ag meeting.
right now we have all the meeting on the 11th.
Yeah.
And we have one director that's in jury duty all that day, maybe. Or I don't know, we could do it on the Thursday, December 12th, if you want, I guess. I mean, it's really up to you all, but, I think last year we moved it up a week.
Yeah.
We did.
We did. We could cancel it, I don't recommend it,
No.
but,
Well, no, we got some swearing in to do.
because we do, we
Yes.
have,
Well, I like, then the 12th is about the only time it can fit in if we move it a week ahead of time. Because the 10th is finance, the 11th is Olive, and then, so the 12th will be our meeting.
I can't, well, yeah, we had it at 6, I'd be fine. I have no problem with the 18th. Are you trying to leave town?
Good chance.
What kind of items are gonna be on our December 18th? Oh, the swearing in, which
You need to be.
you need to be there.
yeah.
You can't do that remotely.
We do need to do
So
that.
that answered that.
We do have the swearing in, we will have, the financial, items. We will have the water treatment plant, both report and engineering report. And, we will have hopefully the auditor selection.
Yeah.
So we do have some stuff to do.
Yeah. there, she could be sworn in January though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, too.
It's up to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I hate having,
I think we might wanna stick to the 18th, sounds like. By the way, by the way, all candidates that filed for office, what did you have to do? Right?
Yeah.
You had to, that actually is your swearing in that puts you in the office officially. This is both ceremonially and required by the district to do it.
yeah.
So if you didn't do it, so in other words, if you didn't do it till January, it's not a big deal, but we do need it recorded
I don't know if you
that
can
you did
do
it
the
at
same time.
the site.
This individual.
18th, stick with the 18th?
Fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah, what?
I have no issue with the 18th. Sorry, Ken.
I'm not going anywhere.
Didn't bug me.
All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll send out an email and see about dates for visiting the treatment plant, see if we can get that coordinated next
That's
week.
fine. We'll pick a good weather day.
Yeah.
Anything else from members of the board?
Not for me.
How about from Bill? He sat here quietly through this whole thing.
He's just visiting.
Do you have questions?
You?
You're due to be here next month at the board meeting though, so. It's 8:15.
So, I'm not recognizing faces though, is this a new face or an old face?
That's an old
That's
face.
an old face.
That's an old face.
Old face.
That's that chap?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Hasn't know.
well, I thought maybe it was one of our newer employees that I don't know. Hi, Chad.
I don't think any of the new employees have shown up, have they?
Oh, I
Don't
don't
any of them?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So do you have anything else? We're done.
At what time? 8:16.